this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And as we get into today's episode with David, let me just introduce him really quick. So David Yourgrau is a seasoned technology and workforce development professional with 15 years of experience. He's the co-founder and COO of Stack Education, and we're going to dive into what is Stack Education and what it is that you guys are doing. And I look forward to the interview today, David. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Don. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about, so what brought you into kind of this field of, education, and especially, you guys are doing some stuff in life sciences as well. So just curious sort of what put you in this space as well.
Yeah, so I grew up, both of my grandfather and my dad were both entrepreneurs, and they were entrepreneurs in totally different fields. So my grandfather was an organizational psychologist. He was kind of like the original career coach. He worked with executives on career coaching, ran a firm doing it was effectively workforce development and career coaching for in the 1950s. So wow. Very early on. And then my dad ran a TV and production company based out of Boston. And so from a very early age, I just saw how kind of feasible running your own company was, and also had that kind of workforce development side of things too. I have a lot of family in academia as well. And so I got my start in tech. I actually initially was going to be a lawyer. That was my career path in college. And then I was studying for my LSATs right after college. And honestly, the LSATs is this great thing that you get to say when you graduate college, because it makes you sound like you have a plan. And it's a great answer to give people. But I when I was studying for my LSATs, I got hired by this company called Level Up. It was a technology company, mobile payments. I think it was 2011. So it's a really nascent space. And the company just took off like a rocket ship. It was a super fun ride, and I never looked back since with technology. And then in around 2015, 2016, I joined a company called Startup Institute that was doing educational bootcamp programming for individuals looking to get into the tech space. So it was an organization created by the founders of Techstars, and it was this idea of, how can we train individuals to work in the tech space and give them the skills, experience, and network necessary in order to get jobs in the tech space. And I just found that to be such an interesting challenge, because I had so many friends who were looking to make career transitions. And I think that, it's one of the, outside of starting a family, it's one of the biggest things you're going to do with your life is what you're going to do with your job. So I really was kind of inspired and excited by that challenge. And then from there, we saw another opportunity with Stack, and that's where we took off.
Very cool. And, how has your 15 years of experience in technology and workforce development really shaped your approach to your current role?
So we come with clinical research from a kind of a unique lens. So the reason we got into clinical research is through our own unique experiences. So I've been in a clinical trial. My father has a medical condition that's forced him to be in a few different clinical trials. And then my co-founder has been in clinical trials, and her son's been in clinical trials. So we saw firsthand kind of how necessary and imperative these types of treatments are, and particularly how important the study staff are in conducting these experiences. From patient perspective, that's your main person, that's your main go-to. And then behind the scenes, they are doing so much. So when we were doing tech programs, we came across clinical research, and we thought this could actually be something where, if you think about a workspace that needs tools, needs education, needs resources in order to be successful, I can't think of a more important or needed area to address that. So that's the lens that we approach clinical research from.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear that this part of the journey though too, because maybe we should just dive a little deeper into that. So I would imagine, besides your own experience, right, you've had to have a lot of conversations that led you to this point as well. We were talking before the show about, where do I find guests? I mean, typically it is personal relationships. I mean, there are, people I certainly get introduced to, and then people I connect to, and I'm constantly asking people, hey, your story might be interesting. Why don't we talk about it? So, just curious to hear, a little bit more about, what, as you were going through this. I mean, I would imagine that you had to have a lot of conversations to kind of land where you guys landed as an organization. And did you have to did you start somewhere and pivot at all along the way?
Oh, I mean, totally. I mean, if you say you don't pivot as a startup, either you're not doing it right or you're just lying, or you maybe didn't even think you did a pivot and you absolutely did a pivot. So we initially started doing these boot camp style programmings for colleges and universities. So we did tech programs for colleges and universities when Stack first got started. So we partnered with, we were working with at one point like 15 different colleges and universities running data analytics and coding bootcamp programs. We actually worked with your alma mater, Indiana Wesleyan. They were one of our great partners. Lauren over there, if he's watching, Lauren, you're great. And then that's when there was, the tech space is saturated, and especially for those types of educational programs. And we wanted to look for an area where you could really make an impact. And through our own personal experiences with clinical research, my co-founder at the time was in a clinical trial. So she kind of had this upfront experience of like, what about these CRCs and regulatory staff and other study staff? What about these positions? So we began just doing our own research, and then we're in Boston. So if you walk outside, you're going to bump into a hospital. So luckily we had a lot of people in this community who work in that space. And the more we learned about it, the more we learned just, from an individual worker perspective, it's a remarkably hard job. People are overworked, overburdened. There's a ton of pressure on them. And then from the employer institutional perspective, clinical trials are remarkably inefficient, particularly on the operational side of things. I was talking to a sponsor the other day, and the sponsor was saying that their clinical trials budget is 8x what their translational budget is. And they are always experiencing delays. They're always experiencing mistakes. And that's where we really focus on, how can we address this issue? So we actually started running our clinical trial programs out of colleges and universities. And then the Boston hospitals came calling and asked if we would do it internally for them, training existing staff. And then from there, once we were developing these training programs, we were like, well, there's no way they're going to remember all of this content when on the job, particularly in something that's so stressful, so hectic, so overwhelming as clinical research. Like, how can we provide them with better resources to allow them to flourish in the role? And that's where this idea of an AI co-pilot came about. So because of our tech background, we didn't search for a tech solution. We more searched for the problem. And then the problem happened to be able to be solved by technology.
Very cool. So, in your career, what were some of the key milestones that you kind of look back and go, these were pivotal moments for me overall in the journey that I took that led you to the point where you are today?
That's a good question. So when I first graduated college, this is a little bit of a long backstory, but when I first graduated college, I was studying for my LSATs, and I actually got hired by my dad's company. And it was doing television. I was horrible at television. I spent like 6 months doing it. I was on this show called America's Cutest Cats. I was doing footage all day. I was looking at YouTube videos of cats every day and then I was going home and studying for my LSATs at night. It was miserable, and I commuted with my dad. So I had like the worst of both worlds. I was the boss's son, and I had the worst job at the place making. I mean, I was like telling my dad, I'm like, I'm going to unionize everybody. This is brutal. And the company was a decent size. There was around 100 people. So I never reported to my dad. There were a few layers below us, but I commuted in with him. And I go in one Thursday, I'm like 6 months in, and the manager calls me in and says, "Hey guys, I'm sorry the show's cut." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And he was like, you don't have a job. And this was 6 months into after graduating college in a job where I am doing the most mundane thing imaginable. And I just got laid off by my dad's company. And it was 1 p.m. So I had to wait in the office for him to leave because he's my ride home.
Oh no.
So there's just this empty section of the office, and it's just me sitting there waiting, stewing, and we get in the car, and I just remember being like, you're so humiliated. You're just like, what the heck? And he's like, it's kind of, it's life. I'm sorry. Like, and I honestly think that experience kind of fuels me. Where you always have to every single day prove yourself and prove your worth, and opportunities can go away very quickly. So you need to seize them while they're there. And then that was the best thing that happened to me, because after I got laid off, I ended up getting a job at Level Up. Again, studying for my LSATs, fully intending to go to law school, and then got hired in the tech sector, which, that experience, I had no idea. I had no experience in technology. I had no interest in joining that space. It was just an opportunity that popped up, and you get hired and you kind of meet the moment and you figure it out. And I think that time period was really, really critical.
I mean, it is so important to understand, and I mean, these sort of things happen to people all the time anymore, right? I mean, there's constantly, you see, I don't know how many posts on LinkedIn, hey, I got laid off from my job today, blah, blah, blah. Hey, look, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to go do next. Been looking for, 6 months plus, whatever. I mean, the other funny thing that ran through my head at that moment where had you become an attorney and then become an entertainment lawyer, I would really laugh right now. So,
yeah.
That would have been the ultimate sort of circle here. Hey, look, we're closing the circle on cat videos. So, yeah.
By the way, I would not have been a good attorney. I can change my mind. I can get I can convince myself of something different very quickly. So I'm like quick to change my mind, and so wouldn't have been good for the client.
That's funny. So, I mean, obviously, Stack Education is growing. How do you see your role evolving over the next, year or two?
That's a really interesting question. I think right now we're still in it's hard. Like, there's a trade-off when you're experiencing this right now, where I'm sure you have your hands in almost everything. And there is something that's really kind of exciting about that and fun about that. And it's also like, it's that, control, but you also want to concentrate on some larger things as well too. So I love working with our clients. I'm the main person that works with our clients. I love working with them. I don't see that changing. What I do see changing is, you handle a lot of minutia. You are doing payroll stuff. You're doing admin things. You're doing there's this whole layer. So I think handing off some of those things and then getting greater specialists into certain positions, and we have an unbelievable team. But there's certainly some roles where people are doing a lot of stuff, and I think being able to bring in some specialists into certain areas would be incredible. And it would also offer us an opportunity to have some real subject matter experts in certain areas where we can work collaboratively with them. And I yeah, that's just doing a little bit less on the minutia side of things.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I've I've grown several different organizations, and it's kind of funny to me how things sort of evolve over time. And going from let's say like 10 people to hundreds of people, you definitely see things shift quite a bit in terms of that. I mean, you wind up sort of, I tell people all the time that the umbrella is really large whenever you're a very small company, in terms of all the
Yeah.
stuff that you have to cover. And then it sort of gets smaller, but at the same time, like, you have to understand whether or not if those things are actually happening the way that they're supposed to happen inside of the company too, because there's still a lot of stuff that people may not understand, whenever they go to do that, whatever their task is in the company. But you continue to sort of subdivide that large umbrella into smaller and smaller segments before you get to the point where it's like, hey, look, we have to have a different set of skills now, where we have to have people that are primarily spending their time doing all the strategic thinking inside the organization versus the more tactical execution. So yeah, there's a level of evolution for sure that every
Absolutely.
organization goes
Absolutely.
through. So
Absolutely.
let's talk a little bit about what does Stack Education do? How does it contribute to life sciences? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I just want to make sure that people fully understand what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, so we provide right now we work with mainly with academic medical centers. We work with site networks. We work with SMOs, and we provide those existing staff members with an AI co-pilot and educational training programs to accelerate their work and empower the workers to more effectively do their jobs. We want to be a solution that you can bring into your organization, and it just supercharges your workforce through adding skills and resources to those existing staff. So there's two different ways that we do that. So the first is this AI Copilot solution. So this solution consolidates the entire universe of clinical research. One thing that we noticed at a lot of these organizations is information is just super scattered. Staff have to rely on each other for different answers. There's a lot of things that are just kind of like you have to either A, learn on the job, or B, they're locked away somewhere in like an SOP that some people have access to, some people know where it is, a lot of people don't. And then there's all the slew of regulatory information that they're having to cover. Let alone just being able to do the nuts and bolts of the actual job and knowing, what's effective GCP, study and site management, data entry, all those different things. So our tool consolidates that entire universe and provides them with this uniquely specific AI Copilot conversational chat tool for the workers while they're on the job. And so providing them the resources is one point. And then we have these, because of our workforce education backgrounds, we have these really interactive, high quality, expert designed. They're all designed by people who work in clinical research, taught by them, graded by them, educational programs in GCP, research ethics, study site management. So everything that staff need to know in order to effectively do the jobs. So we do this both in clinical trials and in research administration.
Very cool. And then what sort of things are you most excited about in terms of supporting things like talent shortage and things like that in the life sciences industry?
I think, right now there is, from what we've seen with places, is staff are going to be asked to do. I mean, this is a darker answer because I think staff are going to be asked to do more than they've ever had to do before. And they're already doing a lot. Like the pressure is really on for these places in talking to them. And it's what was already a hard job is now even harder, which is not fair. It's bad for society. It's bad for those institutions. So for us, it's, how can we enable existing staff to be more effective in their jobs? And what I am a little bit, what's good from the stack on that is it clarifies things, because we also do a lot of talent creation as well too. But if you can really enable existing workers and provide them with the tools and resources to be successful in their jobs, you can make a huge breakthrough in clinical research. And there are so many different with AI really taking off like it is right now. There are so many ways that you can continue to build out technology tools to enable these workers to be faster, smarter, more confident in their roles. Um, so that's what I'm really excited about is, being able to further build, grow, and develop these existing workers. Not just be able to do the jobs well, but we want these people to stay at their organizations. We want them to grow in their roles. Getting a promotion, growing into a role is a life changing experience. So from the personal side of things and the professional side of things, supporting people like that is really where I get excited.
Very cool. And how many people do you currently have in the company?
So we have 6 people full time, and then we have a slew of contractors.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like a dozen or two contractors that we work with. So we have a full team of clinical research experts, dev team, everything.
Very cool. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face right now in terms of workforce planning and talent management? How are you addressing those?
I think like everybody right now, it's the NIH kind of uncertainty and all the changes. So because our clients, we work so closely with our clients, and they're experiencing changes on an almost daily basis, whether it be vaccine trials getting cut, whether it be losing grant funding. So I think navigating those waters with organizations and figure out, okay, like how can we best support you? And we've had to be creative on how to help clients out. And I think the day to day uncertainty and then the future uncertainty, which I'm sure you're hearing from everybody you're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because, watching a lot of the university funding initially was sort of the first, main signal that, a lot of us saw. And I remember calling some of my friends that had jobs in universities. I'm like, so what is the impact? And they're like, oh, we're still trying to sort that out. We don't know exactly, but we're still trying to sort it out. I think they're further down the line now. But again, in terms of anything having to do with SBIR or NIH, for sure is being impacted. And there's one organization I'm directly supporting that, we've been waiting for, any sort of news on commercialization grants and things like that since, I don't know, December, January. So,
And you should bring a pillow because it might be even longer.
Yeah, you just don't know. Yeah. Just
On
the
the
land of
work,
uncertainty.
I actually want to. I actually thought of something else with the workforce development side of things. That's interesting. So, I think you probably use. I'm sure you do use AI tools, like
Oh yeah.
ChatGPT.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I'm at this point like a cyborg. Like half of me is just constantly using some sort of technology tool. I actually need to break myself off a little bit because like I'm way too addicted to stuff right now. But most workers don't, which has been super fascinating. Most of them do not use AI tools. So being able to teach people like what they are, how they work, not to be scared of them, and then how to use them effectively. Like like I'm sure when you started doing, it was so interesting was when ChatGPT first came out. I remember listening to some of the interviews on how people were using ChatGPT. It was like, oh, write me a poem in Shakespearean language, these like little like party trick kind of things.
Right.
But it can be such an effective day-to-day tool if you know how to use it for the job. So teaching people how to do that, and then also teaching organizations and teaching staff that having something that can help you provide answers like isn't some cheating, or it's not some scary thing to avoid. The best analogy is the calculator. Like, the calculator from a educational tool
Yeah.
was in the 1950s, like, this thing that people were terrified about
Yeah.
because, well, people aren't gonna know how to do math. Like, they won't have to learn how to do math anymore, you know? But what the calculator did is it allowed, like, it was the rising tide for everybody. So everyone now has access to doing this basic arithmetic so they can do even further advanced math. And that's what we're really hoping to do with AI is, like, can we provide that baseline of people so that everyone can do that, 50 to 75%, and then do the really, like, get them all to focus more on that advanced work, the things that really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big evolution. I mean, the interesting thing that we're working on right now, for our clients. So it's a lot of the digital marketing tools that we have, more or less you get things based on the things that your business more or less needs to talk about in your industry today. So we do a lot of keyword research. We know essentially what draws traffic in for different people, and then we can create content, loads of content around that using AI and automation and things like that. And so you kind of get whatever the tools serve up. That, I mean, you don't really get a lot of control today as a client. But what we created lately, and I just bumped my microphone with it, but so you'll be able to talk to your cell phone pretty quickly and just pull out your cell phone and dictate what you'd like to have a new piece of content on. You want a piece of content on education today, and you say, hey, look, I want you to generate a piece of content and show me what essentially this would look like. And it'll send you back what the post would look like, and then it'll send you back the picture, and things like that. And you could say, yeah, schedule that one for today or tomorrow or whatever, in lieu of what's currently on the schedule, on the social media schedule, and it will slot it back in. And so for me, AI and automation together is a real game changer. It just, really, really able to, help people. And back to your thing about, more or less prompting, um, 90% of the prompt is written for them. So, it's more or less got to take that voice, whatever the voice thing is, and kind of figure out what is the main topic in that voice, dictation that's come across, and what are some of the key points and things like that, and then flip that around into a piece of content, which is not easy to do, right?
Oh,
So yeah. So anyway, but I mean, as advanced as AI is, I mean, it's able to kind of figure a lot of this stuff out. So it is exciting to see for sure.
it totally is. Yeah. I mean, when we talk to places about, when we get into places right now, there's the core features of the tool that currently exists, which is it's a lot of document and answer retrieval. So it's, like, what do I do in this circumstance? And it synthesizes all the information and gives you a clear, concise answer based upon both our training content, the publicly accessible information, so the regulatory content, and all their internal documentation. So it gives them the specific answer for their institution. And then it also pulls the documents that they need to reference for that answer. But when we talk to places about, like, okay, well, what would you guys need next? And then when you really start hearing their brain churns around, like, all these different solutions that are super feasible with AI, like, that is where I get very excited too, because it is so feasible. And some of these problems can be addressed, through this tool, through this solution, in really short amounts of time. Like, we're building out a new build right now. It should be ready for in about a month, that I am super excited about.
Yeah, I heard a statistic the other day. This is just kind of another aside, is that coding now is 85% faster because of the fact that you have all these AI tools to help the coders as well. So it's, yes, they still have to dig through things and problem solve and things like that. And for anybody that's, tried, using any of the AI coding tools, that's not somebody that typically develop software, it can be frustrating. So I personally have tried tried this myself, and I'm like, look, I after the fourth or fifth time of troubleshooting the same problem, I'm like, look, I just need to hire somebody to go fix whatever this thing is. It's not worth not worth me continuing to run around the circle with this thing. So
Yeah, unfortunately, it allows one to be a little bit overconfident in what they can do, and then sometimes we go down rabbit holes. It happens to me all the time.
yeah. So how do you ensure that your workforce is agile and able to adapt to new opportunities and technology advancements?
That's a great question. I mean, one thing is providing them with. I think education and training is going to be it's always essential to individuals. um, and it's so being able to constantly train these people, give them the skills, knowledge necessary in order to know what to do. I think that is key. I don't think that's going anywhere. Like, you can have all the technology solutions in the world, but if you don't know, if you're not an expert in your field, you can only utilize them to a certain extent. It's a little bit similar to the calculator. Like, anyone can do basic arithmetic, anyone can do multiplication, division on a calculator, but in order to do calculus, like, you still need to have that expertise. So for us, it's continuing to make these interactive training programs on top of the AI Copilot tool, so they can really have that baseline of knowledge, that expertise, to effectively use them.
Mhm. So important. So, David, what's the greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever received?
So I was thinking about this when you sent the questions over, because it's hard. Um, I think there's a few. So you know, one is uh, accountability is contagious. So I'm sure, as you've worked for too, all of us have worked for people, like leaders who just never look in the mirror and never hold themselves accountable, and which then it's contagious. Like, all of a sudden you know that, oh, they're not holding themselves accountable, then I don't have to hold myself accountable. Um, and you're able to behind the scenes, A, not trust them, and then B, also, you're not holding yourself accountable on the day-to-day basis. So when you're out of their sideline, like, you just know that you don't have to hold yourself accountable. So I think, holding yourself accountable to that person, one, it builds trust. Like, they know that you're treating yourself the same way that you're treating them. It also inspires a little bit of confidence as well too, knowing that I'm in an organization that, effectively has its stuff together, and I'm working for someone who has some self-reflection, and also is someone who, treats themselves like they treat me. And then the other thing, is you can't grow without oxygen. And I think the first thing you do when you're a new manager, and I have made tons of mistakes managing people. I think it's still an evolution for me. I'm constantly trying to get better at it. I don't know if you ever really achieve being, an incredible man. I think it's just, you're constantly have to iterate and change your way, because especially the people who work for you, like, they're going to come with different profiles, different experiences, different motivations. So you need to adapt to them. But giving people oxygen to grow, like, how you want it, your job as a leader is to tell them the why, and then tell them the what, and then allow them to have some space and maneuvering to grow into their position. And also, again, that inspires confidence. Like, if you say, like, I trust you, like, use your own judgment in making these things, like, people, I think, rise to the occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. What inspires you?
So, this is an interesting question, because I took it a few different ways. So, I could think about it in a few different ways. So one thing for me is when values and mission supersede any personal benefit or accolades. So, there's kind of two different things for this. So the first is, and this is a weird example, but I remember, there was this old interview of John Oliver in, like, 2020 or 19 or something like that. And he got invited to do this movie premiere or movie viewing, for, I think it was like Wag the Dog or Tail the Dog or something, but it was like De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, I think Allison Janney was on stage. And it was this super shishi event. And John Oliver probably shouldn't have been invited, but he was. And he was on stage interviewing these people. And Dustin Hoffman just had these accusations comes out, these Me Too accusations. And John Oliver asked him about that in this like very uncomfortable setting where the power dynamics were totally shifted. I'm sure it was, so many people when they get put in that position just want to kiss the ring and be as obsequious as possible so they get invited back. And John Oliver was really, really pushing him and made it super uncomfortable and is never getting invited back to those things ever again. And I just remember being so kind of inspired by that because he had every reason to do the other thing, but he didn't. And knowing that like, okay, he can't be bought and that his values and his mission supersede any personal benefit or accolade that he could have gotten there. That was inspiring. The other thing is this is a little bit more of like a workforce development thing, but when you are able to, I think macro numbers are really fun. They're great to see. They are exciting. So when we see, people using the tool, people getting answers, that's amazing. But the real thing that inspires me is actually hearing from people on how something helped them grow in the role, how something helped them secure a new job, how something helped them get a promotion. Like those things carry me. I print out emails I get from people with accolade and I put them on the wall just because I think like that's what drives me is people being able to get these positions that totally change their lives. Like growing in clinical research, growing in research administration is a life-changing thing. And I think that's what really drives me.
Yeah, absolutely. What concerns you?
So what concerns me is a little bit related to the values and mission superseding personal benefit. So I kind of think we're in the golden age of fraud. So it's kind of never been easier to project yourself as something when you're not. And a lot of times it's almost like that projection is more reality than the actual reality. And I think that allows people to project like this success in something without actually putting the work in and convince people of that and mislead people. And that idea that like image is greater than substance right now scares me. I was thinking about as an entrepreneur, I get a lot of questions about my business. And I remember when we first started, I would get like one type of question, and then it was kind of like basic, how'd you start it? How'd you know? And now people who have no experience in entrepreneurship, no experience starting a business, suddenly have access to all of this verbiage and these terms that they've heard from Shark Tank, that they've heard just from online. So like the democratization of language is helpful, but like language 15 years ago, 10 years ago used to signal that you knew something about it.
Right.
And you had some expertise. Now everyone can use those words and use those terms and make themselves sound like they know what they're talking about. Like the amount of times I get asked about our runway, because that's like the first thing they ask on Shark Tank, is crazy. And it's such a weird question to ask a company.
Yeah, it's it's one of the things that so most of my consulting practice was focused on a couple of different things: process improvement, scaling organizations, and helping companies with systems and processes around things like project management and program management and things like that. And the interesting thing that happened, this happened a couple of different bios ago. So I was at a conference. I was standing in a group. There was an individual that was there that was relatively fresh out of college. And their claim was, look, I just turned around a multi seven-figure organization, had massive impact, blah, blah, blah. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, maybe you got lucky. Maybe you found maybe you found somebody that trusted you, one, two, that that you really figured something out that none of us have ever figured out. But I really kind of question, like, what were the real results and who was the leader that was involved and how big was the team? Because most likely there were either one of those things that really set the results that you achieved aside. Not that, anybody couldn't essentially sit there and Google, how do I do this? How do I talk about it? How do I make sure that I'm using the right language?
Oh, 100% ChatGPT generated, and like we get resumes and it's like, oh, come on, at least try to make it seem like ChatGPT. And everything looks the same now because everyone's like putting in the same prompts, using the same language on their things. That also like concerns me too, because the amount of times that like you will ask someone for something and it's clearly just put through ChatGPT, like just quickly. And I've dealt with this with like friends when they're doing something, or with contractors, and you're like, "Oh," like you I'm not going to read something that you didn't read either. Like you just clearly uploaded the document or like put in some prompt and then like generated this thing. And now I have to read this stuff that you didn't write, and I'm not going to read it. I'm probably just going to put it through ChatGPT. So eventually we're just going to be bots just talking at each other. Like you'll have the Don bot, all the day bot, and they'll just be going back and forth with stuff that neither of us read or understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen, there's a meme that's floating around that's similar to that, something like, help me write this email. And then, the person who receives it, help me read this email. And then, help me reply to this email.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, one step after the other, nothing but, essentially AI generated, back and
And
forth.
with that guy that you were just talking about, who was kind of projecting himself to do something with, uh, potentially misleading. That goes a little bit to the golden age of fraud thing, because I'm not saying that this guy was fraudulent, but this guy clearly was projecting
Yeah.
himself as something that might not be entirely true. And so it's almost to be able to ask him about that and uncover the truth,
Mhm.
like someone would have to have an expertise in that area to be able to ask the right questions and suss out the right information. So that's where like we have a greater responsibility to be experts, to be smarter, to be more skilled in these areas, so we can actually uncover the truth, the remove the patina of the projection.
Yeah, I guess the other point that I would make here as well, because I've said the same thing, that we're going to have to become a lot better at really understanding, what is the stem of the thing that you're talking about, so that you can get to the real root of, does this person really understand, or are they just sort of, echoing things that they've heard or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I, I recently, ran across somebody that had said, hey, look, I get all my news from social media, and the particular social media that they use, I'm very familiar with how their algorithm works. And I'm like, it's shaped in what you want to hear. So this is like saying, hey, look, if I want to hear nothing but, things about wildfires or environmental concerns or whatever, the algorithm eventually is going to only send you those things and occasionally test whether or not if you still want to see that kind of stuff or not. So you'll get like one random thing that, all of a sudden counters, let's say, climate change, or, counters, the fact that there are wildfires, places, just to test whether or not if you really are you really wanting to see this stuff still, or do you want to flip to the other side? And so, it's a real concern for me as well that, hey, look, our tools, more or less are meant to feed us the information that you're looking for. So that's not necessarily always a good thing either.
And they have so much momentum. Like if you just turn your brain off and you don't operate, with your own agency, you can be led down a road that you did not even know existed, into a destination that you're not prepared for. So like you have a responsibility to like step out, have some self-reflection and be like, like maybe I'm getting like, I need to step out for a second and like look into this. It used to be like the old thing is, did you Google it? Google it.
Right.
People would like ask me questions because I'm probably way too up to date on like current events and stuff, and also with the line of work we're into, like uh, national dynamics always kind of affect life science and education, and the amount of times that like people will just ask you something, you're like, well, Google it yourself, like look into it, have some curiosity, like develop a perspective, like actually like become schooled in this thing versus just you don't need to know about everything. Like know about some things really well. And if you just because you came across something, like have some insight and have some personal responsibility and actually dig into it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Last question. What excites you?
So what excites me, from the workforce side of things, and I kind of alluded to this before, but like the level of expertise I think we're going to be able to get by being able to kind of take this, AI, I think is going to be able to really take, and I'm speaking from our line of work. I don't know the intricacies of what is actually getting built in some of these models and what the future holds for all these things. Like that's for larger companies like Anthropic, OpenAI, all those things to figure out. But from the workforce side of things, like I'm really excited to see the level of expertise people are able to get to because they're able to concentrate on the things that actually matter. Like, we were talking about how, you're able to be, when you bring in more people, you're able to be more strategic. You're able to be more forward thinking in your job. And what AI does is it kind of like gives you the staff of people just personally for you to handle those things so you can focus on that work that really, really matters. Yeah, I think, from a darker perspective, we're going to be cyborgs in a sense, but I am excited to see like what the kind of like, I think this will help people achieve kind of their 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 peak kind of work expertise and work performance like never before. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast and for sharing what's going on at Stack Education. And your work seems so critical as well for especially our space. So thanks a lot for coming on and telling us a little bit more about the company.
Thanks for having me, Don.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.